Hi everyone, welcome back to Met Talks. This week, I wanted to dig into a topic that I don't often go very deep on, but I think it's really interesting and really important. And it's really one of the things that made Mews a standout company that's been scaling faster than most companies globally in our space. And it's around payments. We find that payments was one of those really big friction points in hotels because if you think every time you go to a reception desk, there's always, can I have your credit card? If it's a booking engine and you want to make a booking, there's a credit card payment. If it's a checkout, it's a payment. And we really thought differently about payments, the way we've embedded it. So if you think about what Uber did to the taxi industry, where now you just walk out of a car and you don't even think about payments and it's all handled seamlessly, we've done that in the hospitality space. But I didn't want you to have to listen to me the entire time talking. So I invited Susanne, who's our general manager for Fintech at Mews. Susanne, welcome. Do you want to just give a short introduction to who you are, what's your background, and what excites you about payments?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, everybody. Thank you, Matt, for having me on Matt Talks. I'm Susanne Sandler. I'm the GM of Fintech, and I oversee our Fintech business. I have a deep background in both travel and in Fintech, working for 20 plus years in various technology companies and working on various payment solutions. And so I'm incredibly excited to have joined Muse about a year and a half ago to help build out our fintech solutions. I think what excites me about payments and about fintech more generally, Matt, is what you started talking about. Payments is not just about processing payments, and it's actually a facilitator to improve the overall operations of a hotel and their commerce. And so when we think about and we talk about our payment solution as it is today, it's something that actually makes the guest experience better. It's something that helps improve the hotel's revenue. It's something that helps them run more efficiently and cut costs. And it's something that we use to actually help them improve their cash flow. So I get excited about payments and I get excited about fintech and offering it to hotels because I know what it can do when it's deeply embedded in our product and how it just makes the hotel have a much better, more successful operation.
And you said a word there that I want to hone in on, which is embedded. You didn't say integrated.
Yeah.
What would you say is the major difference between embedded and integrated? Because it's a real narrative shift that has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So for embedded, it means that the payment solution is deeply. I'm going to use embedded again to explain embedded, but it's deeply a part of the entire solution that we're offering, right? And so if a guest, for example, goes ahead and they come to our hotel and they check in, we tokenize that card, and then that information then gets saved on the guest profile, and then the guests throughout their journey and their stay, they don't need to offer their card again. And all of that information is available throughout the guest profile. And there's various automations as well that we're setting up throughout the system to make that the processing of that payment, the reconciliation of that payment far easier for the hotel, so they're saving time, to make it easier for the receptionist when they're processing the payment in person to actually do it much quicker and much more seamlessly. So to just overall create that better guest experience and improve the operations from both the front of house and the back of house for that hotel.
Yeah, like these are real scenarios in hotels. So when I was a front office supervisor back in the day, you'd have a scenario where, unfortunately, the credit card upon arrival wasn't sufficient to cover the entire stay, and then the guest had left. So then you have an open balance on the bill, and you're like, "How am I going to get this money?" And I was just emailing guests saying, "Hi,
Yeah,
Mr. Johnson, please can you
yeah,
send us your credit card credentials unencrypted in an email to us so that we
yeah,
can charge that on our terminal
absolutely.
in a motor transaction with high
Yeah.
risk." And that's literally what we're solving. So the moment you've tapped your card on a terminal at a reception desk, we tokenize that card safely in our vault. We can charge that against our e-commerce account. So if you do leave without paying, we just instantly can charge that card. One, it makes the life of those poor front office supervisors significantly easier, but also to the guests, they don't have to deal with emails and thinking, how am I going to get my credit card security across? So embedded just goes much further than what we've previously done with an integrated payment terminal that talks to the system.
And it's not just to I guess to your point, I just was thinking about something. It's not just let's say the guests like left without paying their full balance. It also could be for no shows, for example, right?
Yeah.
So we've actually found in our IDC research that we've done that by using our embedded payment solution, that hotels actually have a dramatically reduced rate in no shows by like over 5%, right? So that's 5% of revenue loss that they would normally be having, that by having our embedded payment solution and having us automatically charge the card when the rate becomes non-cancel becomes non-cancelable, that hotel, even if that guest no shows, can still charge that card. And it
Yeah.
also just reduces the likelihood of not showing because when you collect the payment in advance, the guest feels more invested in the stay and feels like they should show up. So, yeah, across the board, having these various automations and embedded solutions really do help improve the overall hotel
Yeah.
operations.
And there's so many examples that we can give, but I actually don't want to focus too much on that. I did a separate Met Talks around payments that you can go back and actually watch as a kind of a background. But we're launching something new that we do need to explain because it is really interesting. And I just came back out of a trip in South Africa and I remember that as I was landing and I was like, I don't really understand what currency I'm paying in. And I was like constantly on ChatGPT trying to convert my things to my currency. And the product we're launching or the feature that we're launching is it's dynamic currency conversion or multi-currency. Can you explain a little bit, maybe in layman terms, what this means?
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so we're launching our multi-currency solution, which is a dynamic currency conversion solution. And quite simply, what it does is it allows a hotel's guest when they're traveling internationally, so going cross-border, to have the option to either pay in their own home currency. So in your case for South Africa, that would be in euro. You could pay in euros, or to continue and pay in South African's local currency. So it gives that guest that option to do either one. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so and I would have loved that because then instantly as I pay, I don't have to go into my own phone to try and convert this currency that I don't understand into
Right.
my own currency. And that's
Exactly.
really what it means to give options. And I think this is very much about what we're doing in travel through the technology change. We just provide more options like through our products. Like if you don't want to check in at a reception, that's great. We've got online check-in, we've got a kiosk check-in. And again, this is one of those things where we're just creating optionality for guests to make the choice of what they want to do. So when we talk about this dynamic currency conversion or multi-currency, where will it show up across our products?
So we're offering it. We're starting by offering it both online, so in our on our booking engine and through payment requests, and then also for in-person payments at the hotel through Mews terminals as well. So you'll be able to do it both. You'll be able to offer to guests before they stay on the booking engine, and then also during their stay as well.
And which currencies would we support?
We'll support pretty much most currencies. You could basically yeah, I think almost
Yeah.
any currency will be able to
If
process
I
and
go
support
into the
with.
booking engine and I change the currency to my own currency so that as I make a booking for my room, I instantly will switch to the currency that I'm looking to understand the rates in. That's
Yeah.
then the currency that I'll get charged in, right?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, and we'll actually work to automatically recognize what your local currency is and then offer that to you. But as it's always an option, just to be clear, right? So we're never going to you always get that option because some guests might want to pay in their local currency, their home currency, and some may want to pay in the currency of the the hotel. But yes, we'll try to detect that for you if it's in the case of the booking engine, and then give you the option of how you'd like to pay. And actually, what we
What are we
found,
trying to solve?
okay,
Like, what are we
okay,
trying to solve through this? So, what are some of the biggest
yeah,
challenges that guests experience as they want to pay for their international hotel stays?
yeah. I would say it's very much about like clarity and transparency for these guests. So to what you just talked about in for South Africa, that's the experience we hear over and over again for guests, which is they get offered to pay in this international currency that they don't know, and you don't know how to attribute value to that currency, right? So if I said this room is 200 euro, that'd be very clear to you what that costs. But
Yeah.
if I said this room to you, if you were going to Japan, is 40,000 yen, that could sound like a really lot of money, but that's about 250 euro, right? But it's very
Yeah.
hard when you hear these like strange numbers that you're not used to process and to kind of process it and understand it. So we really want to create that clarity for the guests so they know exactly what they're paying. In addition, the other problem that happens is if a guest chooses not to use our multi-currency solution and pay in their home currency, but instead what you had talked about when you were traveling in South Africa, what happens instead is they don't know actually what the markup they are paying is, right? So there still has to be an FX like conversion because you are changing currencies. But instead of us helping do it with what's happening is the issuing bank that give that guest that provides that guest credit card, they're the ones that are doing it. And there's no transparency in terms of what the markup is or what fees they're charging. And the guest has to wait multiple days to check their statement, and they check their statement and then they find out. And then even when they check their statement, sometimes there's multiple fees and there's hidden fees, and so they actually can't even really understand what they're getting charged. I was talking to Richard recently, our founder, and he just came back from London, and we were talking about this solution, and he went and he checked the statement, and he had been charged something like 5.3% by Citibank on his transactions, which he was like shocked by because that was very high, and he had no idea also that that was what they were charging him. So it was
Yeah.
just there was no transparency, no clarity for him when he was doing that, and he would have, like you, really preferred to be able to utilize our solution. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
this is the journey that we went on with payments. The first time we came out with payments, we we offered pricing that was really showing all of the details underlying it. It was like it's excluding interchange because we're going to give you the detail on what you're paying for a
great.
card from, this supplier in this country where the guest is from. And we've really gone on this education journey of transparency of these fees to customers. And this is just the next iteration of that, saying we want the guests to know upfront what they're going to pay and not find out several days later once they get home and get slapped with this crazy fee. I often, I use Amex often on my trips. And then I get sometimes when I'm traveling the Nordics, there's a lot of currencies going on there.
Yeah,
Amex is like, beware, you just made a payment and it didn't look like a really friendly exchange rate. And I'm like, great, that's too late now because I've made the payments already on my
exactly.
card. And it's almost saying you're about to make a payment. This is the
Yep.
fees that you're going to pay. Do you want to continue with this? And I think it's just the knowledge up front rather than
Yes.
just being hit with this big fee afterward.
Exactly. Exactly.
So what if a guest doesn't want to pay with multi-currency? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's really simple. They always have the option, right? So they, whether it's online on the booking engine or on our terminals, they're always given the option, and they can choose. So it's completely their choice. It's completely in their control, just like what you talked about, transparency, giving them an option, giving them an additional alternative that should help them have more clarity and transparency, but also totally their choice what they want to do.
Great. So the guest gets more transparency and choice up front.
Exactly.
What's the benefit for the hotel? Why would the hotel want to
Yeah.
do this?
Yeah, sure. Well, first and foremost, right, our hotels care about the guest experience, right? So creating that we want to always be creating that better guest experience for those guests. So by doing this, they are improving that guest experience. But on top of that, as an extra added benefit, the hotel's actually going to make more revenue. So I'll explain how that works. If the guest chooses to utilize our multi-currency solution and chooses to then pay in their home currency, the hotel is able to participate in that FX markup. And so they get a piece of that. And just to be clear, I don't want that to sound like we're then charging the guests extra fees or something like that, right? Because as I just talked about with you, if the guest was to choose not to use our multi-currency solution and pay in their home currency, instead what would happen, it would be that issuing bank that we talked about that issued the card. They'd be charging that FX markup and they'd be making the money. So what we love about this solution is this is us being able to have a way to actually give the hotel a little bit of extra revenue as well, and not have all of that revenue go to that issuing bank. But there's actually more, right? Because to what we were talking about earlier with that transparency and that clarity, we've seen in industry research that we've looked and done as we've been building this product, that especially for online bookings, that when a guest can pay in their local currency, it increases the conversion of the booking, right? So we saw a recent study somewhere of like upwards of 10% increase in conversion for merchants who are able to offer local currency options for their guests. And it's exactly just what we talked about. I know what I'm paying. It's really clear. If I were to
You'll
see
say,
40,000
yeah,
yen or however many ZAR in South Africa, I'd get really confused. You were going to ChatGPT asking, right? That affects conversion. So you want to make that conversion as best as possible. And by offering in the local currency and creating it as transparently as possible, you do that.
nice. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And if hotels who are watching this are like, great, can I have it? Like, what do hotels need to do to switch this on or to set it up?
Yeah, there's not much that they have to do, which is also really great. So this is going to be rolled out with Mews payments. So in Q2, starting in the next month or two, we'll be rolling it out on a rolling basis to many of our hotels in Europe, and then later on in the year, we'll be rolling it out to US, Canada, and Australia as well. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so in the very early days of Mews, we would very quickly roll out products, and we would build a feature, I would test it, and then we would just ram it out to the world and see what happens with it. We definitely are much more mature in the way we build
Yep.
products today. We have entire departments that are doing testing
Yep.
and verification of the code, and then we go through beta programs. So
Yeah.
I know that we're in beta already for quite some time.
Yeah.
So what's been some of the feedback of our beta customers that have been testing this?
Yeah, it's been really great to do the beta and to get the feedback of the customers. We've definitely taken some of that feedback and incorporated it in to improve the offering even more and make it even more easy to use and transparent. But generally speaking, we've been just overwhelmed by the positivity from the beta and our customers. We have customers saying things like it's a no-brainer. We have customers saying a lot of the points that I was highlighting to earlier, how it's really increased guest satisfaction and guest trust because it's much more clear to the guests and they feel like they trust the hotel more, and the hotel is really happy that they can also make some incremental revenue, right? For some hotels, especially if you think about ones that have a lot of international guests, or in places where yeah, where there's just a lot of like currency conversion happening for their guests. This can be a very substantial benefit to them, and even for hotels that have less international transactions, it's still like a really nice offset to all the fees that they have. And so hotels are just incredibly excited, and they're basically saying like, why didn't you release this sooner? When can I have
Yeah.
it? Like they're
Yeah.
just really ecstatic. So I really can't wait until we release it this quarter and get our hotels to using it, and just overall enhance, as we always try to, the hotel's operations, and are able to help hotels like be better businesses as we continue to do.
So just to round it up, so one of the
Yeah,
things I've been talking about has been about driving revenues in hotels, and
yeah,
there's one thing which is just increasing the room rates every single year by whatever the inflation is. So in Europe, we had a
sure.
2.4% inflation last year. So why don't we just increase the rates? But at some point, you reach a barrier, especially as the hotel product deteriorates, and
Yeah,
we have to get more creative in driving more revenue. So I talked about driving more room rates, but doing that smart with a revenue management system, looking at upsells and things. But this is another way to help hoteliers to drive like marginally a little bit of revenue, and it's just making sure that we ensure every pocket where there's opportunity, we help. On the one side, we're embedding this deeply in all of the different products. We're providing optionality to the customers, conversion goes up, and the hotels make some money on it. So it's a really, like, I was so encouraged by the betas. We've now got it live in over 100 hotels, and
yes.
the the experience that they've been having and the conversations that we've been having with these hotels have been so encouraging that I'm like, Suzanne, why are we not rolling it out faster? And she's like, we have tested extensively, but it's genuinely such a good product that is loved by both customers and or customers being our customers being hotels
Yes,
and their customers being the guests. So
exactly.
it feels like a win-win. Did I miss anything on that short summary?
No, you did an incredible job. Yeah, it
Nice.
really is a win-win, and we will roll it out shortly, Matt. It's like you were highlighting, we just really want to make sure that it's successful for our hotels and that it goes really well and it's very transparent and it offers everything that we want. So no, you've got it. It's a win for the guests. It's a win for the hotels. It's something just that we're so excited to offer, and I can't wait for our hotels to see it and to get more feedback.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about that. But I want to
Sure,
end on one last question. I always like to throw a
absolutely.
curveball. I
Okay.
I deeply love hotels, and I talk about those publicly and all my experiences. But what's been a hotel experience that you still think about today that was so special because of something that they did?
Yeah, sure. Um, so as you know, I previously worked at Booking.com, and actually Muse is also based in Amsterdam, but I traveled very regularly to Amsterdam, and I started staying very regularly at a hotel, and I would travel kind of excessive hours, and as it is with business travel and whatnot. And the hotel started to kind of get to know me and recognize me, and they were good about CRM and recognizing my stays and stuff. And so they started doing these little things for me, even though I was having these like very difficult long stays or, business travel. One time they put flowers in my room and welcomed me back. Another time, they put little treats in my room, etc. They always, when I would come in, they would kind of recognize me by name and they would be helpful to me and everything like that. So it was kind of really just those like little touches that they recognized me as a guest and did these little things that probably didn't cost them that much money or overall, but made such a big incremental difference for me in terms of my stay and my happiness and my satisfaction and really encouraged me to want to keep coming back. So I still think about those like little experiences because it made my business trip just so much more pleasurable and enjoyable, even if you're, going back and forth and exhausted and everything. So I
Like,
remember those stays very memorably. Yeah.
and like you really hit on a point that I've been very passionate about this week, and I did a short demo video of how do we help hotels recognize a recurring customer, because
Yeah.
a recurring customer is the most valuable customer, because you don't have to pay lots of money to attract them into your hotel. And how do we recognize them? And we added this great feature on the timeline where you see a recurring with a number in it. So if it says 2, that means that Susanne has been with you twice before. So you instantly welcome them back. And the AI notes help then to curate, saying, Suzanne loves fruits, or put a fruit basket in the room. And we're trying to really make sure that the humans we have at the reception desk, they don't take payments manually by hand. We do that all of for you. And the
Yeah.
fun part is actually engaging with Suzanne, saying, hey, you're back for the 3rd time.
Yeah.
What are you looking to do in the city? We've already taken care of all of your needs. And I think that's where the shift comes from. Payments are not a fun part of check-in. Nobody wants to give a credit card to anyone. Let us take care of that bit. And then you focus on hospitality and really trying to create these really special experiences for those guests that are either first time or returning back to the
Yeah.
hotel. So that was
No,
a really nice segue.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. When payments work well, you don't notice they're there, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the same thing as the Uber example you gave in the beginning, right? But when payments do not work well, you very much notice it, right? And they happen at the worst points. It happens usually at the beginning of the stay, right when you're checking in, or at the end of the stay, right?
Yeah.
When you're like, and those are the two most memorable points of the stay. And I mean, we've all experienced it, right? When there's like difficulty and they're either like processing the card, or there's some issue with the payment, or something's not working, or you're trying to rush off to get your flight, or I mean, so payments working well is so critical to that guest experience. So absolutely,
I
yeah,
literally, that experience I just had in South Africa. I was checking
yeah,
out of a hotel, not a Mews hotel,
yeah,
and they had overcharged my card, and he was trying to refund it, and then instead of pressing minus the amount to refund, he pressed plus. So
right,
he charged me twice the amount. That then the amounts had ballooned to a level where it
right,
was no longer working, and he needed to override the terminal. And I was like, "Can I just give you my Apple Pay and you do it there?" And he's like, "No, I need the physical card." And I don't use physical cards. So it became this thing as I was rushing to the airport. I was like, okay,
yeah,
just is there another way to do this? Because I
yeah,
have a taxi waiting in front of the door.
exactly,
And it's a real pain. That is not the
right.
greatest last impression of a hotel. So
Yeah, and that's what you remember now about your stay, right?
yeah,
Like as
exactly.
opposed to maybe all the other great things that happen. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much
Me too.
for giving this back of house look into multi-currency. It's
Yeah,
coming out in
fantastic.
the next few months. Watch this space. It will be
Yeah.
very seamless.
Yeah, in
Hopefully,
April, it starts launching in April and May for a lot of Europe. So look out,
great.
everybody. It's coming in the next couple weeks.
Nice. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.